Welcome back to True Crime Lounge podcast here on Spotify and YouTube. My name is Breezy, and here we talk murder and other forms of crime. I do have a podcast. I do have a merch shop that you can go and get your true crime gear from. I also have a Patreon that you can join for episodes that are scheduled to come out, such as season episodes and miniseries. I haven't done a miniseries in a while, but I do have a few of them coming up that I will be working on here in the near future. Since I am in school, it does make it a little bit harder to do, but I am. But for any updates on my channel or podcast, you can find me on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. And with that being said, let's dive into the reason you clicked on your episode today. Shall or came across this episode. And Death Red says hi, by the way. Katie Beers was today. We're going to be talking about the case of Katie Beers. And she was kidnapped from a Long Island arcade by John Esposito on December 28, 1992, just 2 days before her 10th birthday. He would hold her in a tiny underground bunk for 16 days, and he had a friendly relationship with De Beers prior to her kidnapping, and after he was questioned, he would eventually confess to the Lee police to her bunker. In 2013, more than 20 years later, Beers would publicly address the kidnapping for the first time in our buried memories. She said that she had been abused in her past, but her godmother and her husband, Linda and Sal and Hillary, by her, um, they kept her, they kept her from school and treated her as their servant and squalid her hubble through the house. Sal also sexually assaulted her, and she was also found with, and she was also placed with a foster family. This was after she was found. On September 4th, 2013, Esposito died inside his cell in a Sing Sing prison in Austin, New York, at the age of 64. Since we have gone over the summary, let's dive into the details now. On December 28, 1992, 9-year-old Katie was captured by a family friend, John Esposito, and held prisoner and abused for weeks. Katie was about to turn 10 when she was kidnapped by a predatory friend of the family and held captive for more than 2 weeks. Just a few days before her 10th birthday in 1992, she was lured into her home of a neighbor and a family friend named John Esposito in Bayshore, New York. He then held her captive in an underground bunker and sexually abused her for 17 horrifying days in a custom-made prison. He even told her that she would spend the rest of her life there as his prisoner. However, Katie's horrific experience ended just as suddenly as it begun when Esposito confessed that she had been rescued. However, her release from the underground captivity also meant that she was liberated from her own family, who had been abusing her since she was just 2 years old. The story of Katie's kidnapping is this this is the disturbing case story of Katie's kidnapping and her rescue. So let's talk first about her abusive childhood. Katie was born Catherine Beers, and she was born in New York on December 30th, 1982. In her early childhood home, she lived in Long Island with her biological mother and her older half brother, John Beers. Um, Her mom, Marilyn, was neglectful of Beers and her older brother and frequently leaving Katie in the care of her godmother, Linda, and her husband, Sal. The domestic arrangement was far worse for Katie's consistent sexual abuse on the hands of Sal. She would go on to say that she was sexually abused she was abused physically, sexually, emotionally, and verbally. As someone who was in an abusive situation, this is kind of hard right here. It's also very much a trigger warning, so this is just a heads up that this case is going to be a bit of a trigger warning, especially if you're still healing from it. And I'm healed from most of it, but just sometimes it's just hard to go back to get to escape it sometimes. You don't really escape it. That's the sad part right there. But in the atmosphere that allowed sexual abuse to go on, a predatory family friend, John Esposito, hovered on the children's lives, showering a young Katie and her brother John with attention and gifts, and he reportedly started sexually abusing John until he believed he was too old. So this was just a case not just of one, but both siblings, which is sad right here. In 1978, he pled guilty to attempted abduction of a 7-year-old boy from a shopping mall, avoiding prison time, but the Veer's family appeared none the wiser and would later say of her childhood and Katie would go on to say that I grew up in a world where abuse was swept under the rug. Sorry. Let me get my stress ball for a minute. And But yeah, and abuse wasn't reported because the community turned a blind eye, ignored it, and didn't report it or didn't know where to report it. And ironically, her childhood gave her mental fortitude that she was soon she would soon need to survive a far more terrifying ordeal. You're probably thinking, why did DHR or CPS get involved? Well, it's been my experience with DHR that they don't want to separate you from a family, no matter how bad it is. That's just been my experience, so I might be a bit biased toward DHR. Let's get back to the case. She was suddenly vanished on December 28, 1992, 2 days before she was turning 10. John Esposito offered to take her on a birthday shopping trip and took her to his home instead. He was 43. He lived in a family home in Saxton Avenue in Bayshore, a middle-class hamlet in Long Island. A building contractor, he also had built his own apartment above the garage and a few yards from the main house. And he put up the posters at a local store advertising himself as a big brother where boys was spending weekends hanging out in the renovated garage. I wonder if there was a lot more that happened in Easter Garage that we don't know about. Um, but Esposito was largely left on his own devices by his family when they all lived together with intercoms located throughout the house. That would be nice right there. According to the LA Times, he John Esposito's fraternal twin said that none of us ever had to go back there. What his family didn't know was Esposito had built a subterranean tunnel leading a concrete dungeon just underneath the garage. Once inside the garage, Beers played a video game in the main room, but when he made sexual advances toward the girl, she rebuffed him, and he forced her down into the concrete bunker. The 6-foot tunnel entrance was concealed behind a 200-pound trapdoor and was hidden by a removable bookcase in Esposito's office. Beers was spent the next 17 days in prison in this 6 by 7 foot space that contained or even smaller coffin-sized soundproof room containing little evidence than a bed and a television. The bunker itself had a toilet and a CCTV system prepared years ago by Esposito specifically for when she arrived. So this was a planned out thing. Like it wasn't like hey, I'm gonna kidnap this girl, sexually abuse her, and hold her hostage. No, he planned this. Shockingly, even he recalled playing in the dirt creating by a freshly dug hole years earlier. With Beers being his prisoner, he devised an explanation for her disappearance and an alibi for himself, forcing Beers to record a tape message saying a man with a knife had kidnapped her. And she would also go on to say that Aunt Linda, a man kidnapped me, has a knife. And oh no, he comes right now. And Esposito then headed to the Spaceflex arcade in Nuscasset, using a payphone outside to play Beer's recorded message. According to the kidnapper, afterward, the kidnapper entered the arcade, feigning panic and telling the staff that he lost Beers inside. So how did she survive his bunker? Well, the bunker where John held Katie underneath the garage in Bayshore for the next 16 days descended and sexually abused Katie. During these moments, he allowed Beers to into the slightly larger part of the bunker, but returned her to the coffin-sized cell before leaving. I would have developed claustrophobic. I am a bit claustrophobic, but that would have just definitely heightened my fear of small spaces right there. But Esposito gave her a blankets, toys, junk food, and soda during the frequent visits of her cell. While the television became Vera's lifetime, news reports on a continued search for her provided desperately needed hope during their nearest captivity. Beers had squirreled away a key to her lock and chain and was able to access the larger part of the bunker in Esposito's absence. Afraid that he would abuse her in her sleep, she managed to stay awake most of the time and would even wanted her to photograph her with her eyes closed as if she was dead. She refused, knowing well that the search for her didn't end. Esposito then told her that he intended to keep her in the bunker for the remainder of her life. But the 10-year-old outwitted her captor. She asked him for a series of screwed questions designed to salt doubt into his mind about the whole thing and how it was going to work. And it was like, how will she go back to school? Where will she work? Esposito insisted that he had enough money to support them both, and then chillingly told her that she was when she and then told her when she was 18 he would marry her and they would have children. However, she, her questioning had the desired effect and got him concerned what the police might have been closing in. Let's move on to the shocking rescue. Upon her disappearance, police identified him as the primary suspect based on his history and proximity to the family. They also had determined that his phone calls were recorded due to an absence of background noise, and witnesses in the spaceflight stated that he arrived on the day of Katie's disappearance. And under constant surveillance, he caved under the intense pressure and on January 13, 1993, he confessed via his attorney leading officers to Beer's concrete cell. She had been stuck under there for 17 days. 17. That's crazy right there. He pled guilty to kidnapping on June 16, 1994, and was sentenced to 15, 15 years to life in prison. 10 pending charges, including sexual abuse, endangering the life of a child, was dropped in exchange for the plea. However, Sal didn't escape justice earlier. Remember him? He was also sexually abusing Katie. Um, he is he's serving 12 years for his sexual abuse on her prior to her kidnapping. Katie was immediately placed in a loving foster family in East Hampton, allowing her to finally escape her life of abuse. As an adult, Katie revisited the torment of her imprisonment by co-authoring a memoir and a motivational speaker. She lived in rural Pennsylvania with her husband and two children. Meanwhile, on September 4th, 2013, John was found dead in his cell due to apparent natural causes. Do we really think it was natural causes? Do we? Not trying to be biased. But Beers, now a 30-year-old mom of two, is breaking her decades-long silence in her release. The kidnapping has gripped the nation in the early 90s. And the last words the public heard from Beers was in 1993 in a terrifying phone message. The man was John, her neighbor, and he held her in a dungeon in a slab of concrete in Bayshore, where he would sexually abuse and emotionally abuse her for 17 days. After he admitted to kidnapping her, she was placed in foster care in the East Hampton home with four siblings. Her foster parents shielded her from the media, so that so she barely seen or heard since then. She is going public for the first time with her memoir and her media tour. She even goes on to say that this is the best thing that has ever happened to me. That she would have never gotten away from the abuse situation she was in. Katie was lucky. I will say this. She has been, she's just lucky. But in her book, she has written about how she had been molested by Sal, from the time she was a toddler. Sick guy. I wonder if, is he on the sex offender registry? I would imagine so. Um, but, and Sal also died in prison. Um, Died in jail in 2009 following arrest on a parole violation. That is it for today's episode. I will see y'all next time. Y'all have a great day and stay safe out there. And also, if you or anyone you know is being sexually abused or being abused in general, don't be afraid to help them. Sometimes they just need someone on their side to help them out in these kind of situations because it's not an easy situation to be in. Alright, y'all. Have a great day. I will see y'all next time. And Dead Fred says bye.